In 1984, heavy metal was #1 on the music charts. A handful of bands were about to skyrocket to the top of the metal world. On one warm, sunny Sunday on Memorial Day weekend near Kalamazoo, Michigan at Timber Ridge Ski Area, many of those bands were on the same stage for one day of music that would make history. It was hot, it was heavy, and it was awesome. May 27th, 1984, it was the American Rock Festival. A lot has been said about the American Rock Festival over the years. To be clear, even though it was called the American Rock Festival, it did feature Accept from Germany, Ozzy Osbourne from England, and Triumph from Canada. But we don't think too many people complained. Also, the festival wasn't really in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It was held at Timber Ridge Ski Area in Gobles, Michigan. Actually, Pine Grove Township, a few miles northwest of Kalamazoo. It took a few years of research to finish this project. Every time we thought we had all we needed, something else would pop up. We certainly haven't heard all the stories yet, but we will tell you about the bands, hear from a few members. We'll also hear firsthand from the Timber Ridge owners, and we'll dive into what happened before, during, and after the concert. And we'll show you what it looked like with hundreds of photos from professional photographers, the promoters, and of course, the fans. 1984 was quite the year for music. MTV was actually playing videos, and they were shaping the music landscape. Bands were begging to get airtime. The first MTV Video Awards were held in September, and although metal bands didn't win much, their videos were everywhere. In March, the rock mockumentary Spinal Tap was released. Ratt released Out of the Cellar and played a total of 5 shows in Michigan that summer, including Kellogg Arena in Battle Creek. In June, Sister Christian from Night Ranger peaked at #5 in the U.S. In July, they played Pine Knob in Detroit. Also in July, Quiet Riot released Condition Critical, which sold half as many copies as their first album, Mental Health. That summer, Judas Priest fans ripped up seats at a Madison Square Garden show, and Priest was officially banned for life. In August, the huge Monsters of Rock Festival in England featured Ozzy, Accept, and Motley Crue. David Lee Roth played his last show with Van Halen. Def Leppard's Rick Allen lost his left arm in a car accident. And at the end of the year, Rudy Sarzo finally had enough of the Kevin Dubrow drama and quit Quiet Riot. So who played at the American Rock Festival? Memories are sometimes fuzzy. Many people still think Van Halen was there. The Scorpions, Ted Nugent, Slade, and Bon Jovi. None of those bands played. There were 7 bands on stage that day. Ratt opened the show and had just released their first full album, Out of the Cellar, which produced their biggest hit, Round and Round. German band Accept was promoting their 5th album, Balls to the Wall, which turned out to be their most popular. Night Ranger was 3rd on the bill, and they were touring on their 2nd album, Midnight Madness, which spawned their biggest hit, Sister Christian. Motley Crue exploded in the summer of '84 and was promoting Shout at the Devil, their 2nd album. Later that year, they would hit big with Home Sweet Home. Quiet Riot was 5th on stage and still riding high from the first ever metal album to reach #1 in the States, Mental Health. However, they were touring in support of their 2nd album, Condition Critical. Ozzy Osbourne had just released his 3rd solo album, Bark at the Moon, his first without guitarist Randy Rhoads, who died in March of '82. Jake E. Lee replaced Rhoads later that year. Lee was the guitarist at the American Rock Festival. And veteran Canadian trio Triumph, led by Rick Emmett, closed out a long day of rock. Triumph was on tour supporting their 6th album, Never Surrender. Who were the promoters? Twin G Productions was George Galbarski and Gene Grobstein. Twin Gs. Barry Fox was also on the list of promoters for this event. The guy who was their right-hand man was Jim Krill. They also hired a local promoter to help with a few things, Alan Bashara from Grand Rapids.
Basically told me they wanted me to be on their staff as a promoter, as a local contact, and they would give me $2,000 for doing that. And so I said, I didn't have anything going that week. And I thought, okay, I'll take your $2,000 and I'll hang out or whatever you want me to do. And away we went.
During the course of making this project, we spoke briefly with George Galbarski and Jim Krill. Galbarski said he met his wife at the American Rock Festival. We hope to speak with them again sometime in the future to get their first-hand version of what happened before, during, and after the show. Gelbarski sent us about 200 photos, including many of the bands and the process of setting up for the show. So how did this concert happen? At the foot of some ski hills off the beaten path in the summer of 1984. Bill Rantz, who is now a professor at Western Michigan University, was the president of Timber Ridge at the time.
That was perfect, and it kind of fell into our lap. We thought, yeah, this fits the plan. But to the size that they presented, it was like, wow, this is going to be big.
Gordon Rantz owns Timber Ridge. After agreeing to host the concert, he said he wasn't comfortable with what may happen.
That was overwhelming. I mean, the people that contacted us to have this thing wasn't real truthful, and I think they could have been because they'd put quite a few of them on around the country. I had a phone call from a guy in Colorado, and he said, do you own the place? And I said, yes, I do. What's the problem? He says, that outfit that's putting that concert on out there at your place, they screwed us, and they're notorious for this. And he said they won't leave your ski area in a very good shape. And I said, my God, I called Gene. He was up north. I said, Gene, we got to put a stop to this. This was 2 days before the damn thing. Yeah, and so Gene come down from up north, and we run around and trying to do something. No, these guys were busy driving stakes through our wiring and cutting doors off so they could take the money in faster. And they had no intentions of us getting any of it, I guess, because that's about the way it worked out.
Even though Twin G was the main promoter, the Timber Ridge crew mostly worked with Twin G's right-hand man, Jim Krill.
What they did is they hired Jim Krill, who came out, and he was kind of the front man. So he represented, because he had experience in something of this large a size. We didn't. We were there to, of course, provide the space and concessions. But, so really, I saw those guys prior to the concert, maybe a couple of times, and it was very quick. So the communication mostly was with Krill.
And even though Gordon Rantz thought the concert went pretty well, he said he wasn't happy with how the promoters treated him and his property.
Everything went pretty damn mental. We had fences down the parking lot and ticket booths every 10 foot. And we thought, boy, we're going to make out. We're going to make out this time. And they had an old helicopter that they came in every so often, and it blew some of the ticket booths over when he landed the one time, and we laughed like hell, but we didn't know why. Just that it was sort of funny. They rented four-wheel drive vehicles from the car dealers. They all knew us, and we had all real good standing with everybody. And hell, we found the cars in the woods. Afterwards, they'd call and say, where's our vehicle? Well, we're going to look for it. And so That's the way that went with that concert.
If you were at the show, you no doubt kept your ticket stub. And there were many, depending on where you bought your ticket. And it only cost $19.50 for 7 bands. Today, this exact show would cost hundreds to see. There were also a bunch of different concert shirts. As you can see, one of the shirts promoted both shows that Twin G was promoting, the American Rock Festival and the Iowa Jam, which was the following day, Memorial Day, in Des Moines. The Iowa Jam was an annual concert that ran from 1974 through 1989. In '84, it featured Ozzy, Nugent, Motley Crue, Night Ranger, and Accept. Most shirts had the logo on the front and all the bands on the back. This is where some confusion comes in concerning who was supposed to be at the American Rock Festival. Nugent and Slade are included on one of the shirts that was promoting both shows. Nugent's tour history shows he performed in Kansas City on the night of the American Rock Festival, but then in Des Moines for the Iowa Jam. Slade had to cancel their tour because of an illness. One of the interesting pieces of information we found halfway through our research was that University of Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh was one of the security guards at the show. Thor Security was hired, and they reached out to college athletes from the University of Michigan, Western Michigan, and Michigan State. Harbaugh's father at the time was the football coach at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, we were supposed to get paid really well for that one because it was we were all going to drive there. I don't think we got paid anything. We were supposed to stay at the lodge. We were supposed to have rooms at the ski lodge, and we never got any rooms. And that's why I remember there was some sleeping in some cars, and I might have it got to a point where I just left and went home. Slept at my parents' house. I think it was kind of a disaster from that standpoint. There was expectations of we were going to get paid well. We didn't get paid at all.
The American Rock Festival had an impact on all the bands, and some of them included stories and photos in their books. In Motley Crue's book, The Dirt, they included a great photo from the top of the hill from Terry Sesfold, who we'll feature in a bit. The Motley Crue official biography mentioned Ozzy punching Rudy Sarzo, and also the fight between Motley Crue and Quiet Riot. Bobby Blotzer detailed Tommy Lee's stalking of Kevin DuBrow in his book Tales of a Rat. He also mentioned that this was Ratt's first really big show. They made $15,000, and one of the few shows they would do with Quiet Riot because of the hatred most of the other bands had for DuBrow. Rudy Sarzo's book Off the Rails talks a lot about his time with Ozzy and recalls the night before the American Rock Festival when Ozzy, still angry that Quiet Riot had stolen him away, punched him in a drunken rage at one of the hotels. In fact, Quiet Riot was booked into a different hotel than the other bands to avoid conflict. It didn't work. The massive book, The Encyclopedia of Heavy Metal, included a nice photo of Quiet Riot from photographer Mark Weiss that came from the side of the stage. This book is a must for any heavy metal fan. When we started a Facebook page for this project a few years ago, we had no idea we would get so many stories about that day. Rock fans drove from all over the country and Canada for the American Rock Festival. Some got there early, some got there late. Some remember all of it, and some don't remember any of it. Here's a little reminder of some of the things that happened at the American Rock Festival.
Martini on guitar. Thank you very much. Have a good day. We are Ratt. God bless y'all.
One of the professional photographers who shot the show is Terry Sesfold. Terry is from Chicago and shot a bunch of concerts in the 80s, including the US Festival and Rock in Rio. He is now digitizing his collection and let us take a peek at what he saw that day at Timber Ridge.
American Rock Festival. Are you ready?
I know that we're in Kalamazoo. Now, is anybody here from Kalamazoo?
I want to know if there's some allied forces out there in them dark hills way back in the back.
And you know, the heartbeat of rock and roll in the U.S. of A. beats the loudest right here in Michigan today. Is that right?
Ross Marino was also at the show that day. Ross was a legendary rock photographer from Detroit. He worked for Cream magazine and shot too many concerts to count. Ross died in January 1988. His collection is now being managed by Chad Morton, who let us use a few of Ross's photos from the American Rock Festival.
How you doing, Michigan? How's everybody feeling by now? I don't know if you know this or not, but we have a brand new video out right now. How many motherfuckers have seen the brand new video? How many people here think MTV's fucked for not playing it so often? Now call them up, motherfuckers! You wanna get hot today? Well, do you want to get hotter?
Kalamazoo! I think you can make more fucking noise than that back here.
A large portion of the photos we have were submitted by fans. Many who were there that day managed to sneak in their cameras. And for that, we say thanks. There are plenty of great shots of the show, every band and from just about every angle. Some close, some from the top of the hill. We also heard many stories. Plenty of sunburn stories, lots of drugs, stories about security taking away some of their belongings on the way in. Many parked their cars on the highway or somewhere along the way to the show. But some who decided to make the drive all the way in picked up fans on the way. Some camped out the night before, and there were many who just don't remember any of it. We're just glad a small few had their cameras to help document what many told us was the greatest concert they ever attended. One of the things people talk about the most when they remember this concert is the horrible traffic jam before and after the show. Timber Ridge is about 7 miles off the nearest highway, which is US 131. Some fans saw the backup on the road to the ski area and decided to leave their cars on or near the highway. According to Jim Krill, who worked for Twin G Productions, he got a call from the police and they wanted to shut it down just a couple of hours before the show. He managed to talk them out of it. There was a similar show a few miles north of Timber Ridge in Martin, Michigan back in 1977 called the Michigan Jam. It caused a similar traffic issue. This is actual footage of the traffic problem before that concert. Ratt opened the American Rock Festival right on time at 10 a.m., a little early for a normal concert, but there were 7 bands on the bill, including 2 who were considered headliners. This was Ratt's biggest show of their career at the time. They had driven from LA for the American Rock Festival. They played for about a half hour. Most of their tunes were from their Out of the Cellar album. Plus, they did a song from Sly and the Family Stone called I Want to Take You Higher. They ended with their biggest song ever, Round and Round. Ratt guitarist Warren DeMartini remembers it well.
And that was one of the first festivals, if not the first festival type situation we ever played, and that was just a complete new experience for us, and it was just part of a year that just was like being on a roller coaster for a year, and but I vividly remember that when there was some rivalries going on with a couple of the bands. I remember there was lots of controversy and just amazing day for music, rock music.
Accept was up next and played for about 35 minutes. The German rockers played all their well-known songs, including Balls to the Wall, which was the title track on their current album. This poster the band released is from the American Rock Festival. They toured all over the world in '84 and were one of the bands that also played the following day in Des Moines at the Iowa Jam Festival. San Francisco's Night Ranger was probably the only band that seemed a little out of place at this show. Their music was very melodic and friendly, and their biggest hit was a ballad, Sister Christian. They seemed to be the only band on the bill that got along with Kevin Dubrow and Quiet Riot. They're also the only band that we found video of from the show. Motley Crue hit the stage next. They had just played in Detroit at the Fox Theater on May 8th. They played songs from their first album and also from Shout at the Devil, which had been released the previous September. During the song Piece of Your Action, singer Vince Neil gave the fans one of their best memories when he climbed up near the top of the scaffolding next to the stage and sang from there. Many who were there that day thought Crue stole the show.
How you doing, Michigan? How's everybody feeling by now?
Kalamazoo! I think you can make more fucking noise than that back here.
There was a bit of a delay before Quiet Riot came on stage, possibly because promoters wanted the rest of the crowd to get in, or maybe because of the fight between them and Motley Crue. When the Mental Health album became #1 in the States in November of '83, Kevin Dubrow was telling everyone who asked how great his band was, and that all the other bands owed them for opening up the door for them on the charts. Dubrow even compared Quiet Riot to the Beatles. Plus, Ozzy was still sour that they had stolen his bass player, Rudy Sarzo. The night before the show at the hotel, Ozzy actually attacked Rudy.
We were sitting there with the guys, Don Airy and Tommy and whatever, and our sound guy, Uplichter, and we were just talking, and then all of a sudden Ozzy comes by, and he was like really drunk, and then he looks at me and starts yelling at me, and as I was getting ready to get up, he just hit me, but he was drunk, so it really didn't do any damage.
Jack Blades from Night Ranger saw the whole thing. Dubrow's bad-mouthing of the other metal bands didn't sit well with Motley Crue. Dubrow had said in an interview that they sucked and would never sell another album. That day, Crue drummer Tommy Lee tried to get his revenge on Dubrow. Ratt drummer Bobby Blotzer was along for the ride.
So when I was done, me and Tommy started partying out and watching all the other bands, and they got to their thing. But he was starting to get himself very worked up that he was going to get Kevin out on stage. And when Kevin arrived and the band, Quiet Riot arrived, Kevin was shrouded in security guys, solo, which I found very distracting and depressing to see this guy have to be backstage with security from the rock stars. I mean, that's not very nice. But Tommy and I were going to go up on stage and watch him play, and he had the idea that he was going to go out and take care of business with Kevin out there on stage. And I was like, well, you're on your own on that, dude. So we got to the top of the stage, and they wouldn't let him up there. They knew, they were told, do not let the drummer of Motley Crue up here. So we got the top of the steps. I went out on the stage, or on the side of the stage, and they wouldn't let him up, and he was fuming, and he had a bottle of Jack that we were kind of nursing on. And he was like, fuck you guys, man, to the security guys, and he split down the bottom of the stairs. And I followed him down there, and some few paces behind him, he's, lanky fucking walking downstairs and fucking doing the, takes the bottle of Jack and wings it in this trailer at the bottom of the stairs, which is the tuning room. Jakey Lee's in there tuning up, warming up, tuning up. And he takes the bottle of Jack and throws it through the window, and it sticks snout first into the walls, and the thing just stuck in there, and I was like, oh. So, he never got to Kevin, thank God, but that was about it, The show went on and everybody had fun.
There were a couple of dust-ups that day. Triumph bass player Mike Levine saw what was happening backstage.
Everybody had a little fenced-off compound for a dressing room area and a small trailer. And we were kind of in the center of everybody, and Crue was next to us and Quiet Riot was next to them. And I don't remember where anybody else was, only because those two bands got in this huge fight. And they were throwing shit at each other, over the little fences. And finally, I think maybe Vince and Kevin went at it. I'm not sure exactly, but we kind of went out and started watching because it got loud and there was stuff flying everywhere.
We asked Quiet Riot drummer Frankie Benali about it, and he denied anything happened that day, calling it a fun event. Ozzy was out of control as usual. Some of the crew working that day said someone had to actually help him get on stage. Just a couple of weeks earlier, he had been arrested in Memphis for public intoxication, which produced one of the most famous mugshot photos in rock history. Later in '84, Ozzy was sued by the parents of a boy who committed suicide. They claimed it was because their son had listened to the song Suicide Solution from Ozzy's Blizzard of Oz album. During the American Rock Festival, Ozzy had the fans' attention, and they were swaying back and forth for most of the show. He also threw his shirt and coat into the crowd, dumped water on people, and because it was so hot and it was Ozzy, they loved it. Ozzy, just like a couple of other bands, flew in and out in a helicopter. Triumph was the last band to play. They were one of the other bands to fly in a helicopter. Mike Levine loved it.
Actually, the fondest memory, actually the scariest memory, was flying into the gig from Kalamazoo Airport on a logging helicopter. And I guess they had bolted down to the floor these 3 ratty leather couches to sit on, with split seams and the foam coming out of them. And it was a big chopper. It had, double blades, and I'd never been on a chopper like that. We had been on some nice ones before. This was like, riding in an old Ford Fairlane with no shock absorbers. So it was kind of, we're looking at each other, oh my God, are we going to make it? So we did make it, and everything worked out great.
Levine put on a Detroit Tigers hat and jersey. Drummer Gil Moore came out from behind the drums to talk with the crowd and begged them not to leave. The weather was changing and people were starting to go home. They finished their set with When the Lights Go Down, but came back for an encore with Fight the Good Fight. Like a few other bands that played that day, photos from this show ended up in one of their albums. Triumph's Live Stages album had a few photos from the American Rock Festival in the liner notes inside the album. We found very little video of the American Rock Festival. Keep in mind this was 1984. No cell phones, no camcorders. We checked with the Kalamazoo TV station and they didn't come up with anything. We did manage to get some footage from WOOD TV8 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They were there that day and shot some of the show, got up in a helicopter, and talked with some of the fans.
Because it's a holiday. It's a holiday. I'm back here from Florida. Got 3 days off and I'm just living it up. It's a great time. Just relax, recuperate, back to work Thursday.
It's great. Just people getting together and stuff. We had fun up camping, then we came out here. I've never been to anything this big, so we wanted to come out and see what it was like.
A lot of good rock and roll, a lot of good people, a lot of good times.
Partying.
Party hard! Woo!
They also got these great shots of the crowd, and probably the best view of just how many people were there that day. There was also photo evidence that City TV from Toronto was there. Their interest was probably Triumph that day. Also, Much Music was there. They were the Canadian version of MTV and part of the same company as City TV, but didn't officially launch until August of 1984. This interview has been on YouTube for many years and is from Much Music.
The kids out here are crazy today. It was so much fun. Michigan is it's got to be our favorite place to play. Yeah. The favorite. Except Toronto, Canada, I hope. But then you haven't played there yet, though, but we're waiting for you, for sure. All the kids are sitting out there baking and boozing in the sun. Do you prefer outdoor concerts to indoor concerts, or how do you feel about it? One thing about outdoor concerts, they get a lot crazier, it seems, than indoor concerts. Sunstroke. Yeah, I mean, drinking beer and sitting in the sun, man, gets you crazy. And, girls get naked all the time. And whereas indoor concerts, it's more of a mood type thing. The lights set the mood of you're going to go crazy or not. So this is
actually an outdoor festival tests your skills as a band, you know, because you go out there with nothing, just the guys in your band, and that's it, no special effects.
I want to know something about your new album. I was reading you said that the third album is always a real test of strength for a band because they often fall on their asses. What about you people?
We've got some serious stuff stashed away. It's going to kill everybody when it comes out.
Can you give us any more details, or we'd have to wait?
Well, it's we've got a lot of good songs written, you know, for the album. It should be out. You're gonna have to wait for it.
Oh, okay.
Except for me and my piano.
I'm gonna have a good show.
Hey, dude, what's happening?
As you can imagine, it's hard to find decades of old video, let alone someone who might know where it's hidden. But we'll continue our search. Mike Pryson was one of the music reviewers for the Kalamazoo Gazette in 1984. He had covered local concerts in the past along with Doug Pullen. He was also a heavy metal music fan, so he was looking forward to the American Rock Festival.
The Rock Festival was coming into town, and he said, hey, you want to be involved with this coverage? I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, this was going to be our Woodstock. I think Doug and I saw this as being huge. I don't think the rest of the paper did, though. The rest of the paper, I still think we had a photographer, maybe two photographers out there. We had me and Doug. I don't even know if we had news guys out there covering this thing as a huge event that it ended up being. Because I know they were doing a lot of chasing the next week on some of these stories. I think they were expecting a big concert out in the woods somewhere, out in a cornfield, or obviously it was at the ski resort. But when the people just kept coming and coming and coming, I know we were looking at each other going, "This is incredible." This was bigger than just a rock show. My job, and this was my first big show. I mean, I had done a few smaller ones at Wings or whatever, Wings Stadium here in Kalamazoo, but this was my first show that I thought, man, this is the big time. Leading up to the event, I was involved a little bit in the band's promotion, because back in the day too, before the internet, before social media would promote these shows, these bands actually did a lot more phone interviews. I mean, they were always doing phone interviews, with the local radio station and local newspapers to promote that, hey, we're coming. Some of the stories that we hear about the traffic and all that, we didn't see a lot of that because we got in there so early. I mean, I think we might have gotten there, I know the show started at 9. We were probably there at 6 or 6:30. I mean, it was really early. We knew there was going to be a log jam, not anything like it ended up being, obviously, where people were parking on 131 and all that. And after the show, we were working kind of late, so it cleared out a little bit, but I do remember that was just, it looked like the apocalypse on 131. It's like, what is going on here? Can you imagine if you were just driving 131 that day and not had no inkling to go to this concert, know what was going on, and you're seeing all these guys just bail out of their cars and everything. It was quite a day. It was quite a day.
While Pryson's only job was to review the actual show, eventually some of the news writers did conduct interviews after the concert and dive into some of the problems that happened during and after the festival. Pryson was just happy to be at a huge rock event near his hometown that happened at a great time in music history.
It was the perfect storm. I mean, and that's so trite and whatever, but it really was. You look at these bands that were at that show. It was a weird grouping if you look at it, but they were all on top of their game. We never really in America really embraced the festival for heavy metal. I mean, we had a few, Ozfest for a little while, but we didn't have our Rock in Rio. We didn't have our Monsters of Rock thing, and this was something that, it worked so well. When you're there, you don't realize this is it. We expected, okay, they'll come back next year. They'll come back in 2 years, fix the things that, fix the problems they had. How can you say no to something that was so successful? I'm sure the folks up in New York said the same thing about Woodstock, but when cows aren't giving milk for the next 10 years, I mean, that probably, hurt the whole issue. But we did not know, even at the paper, I don't think we knew about all the lawsuits and all the issues, right away. And it would have been interesting if we would have had more of a team out there that day to kind of follow it as the day. But like you said, the promoters, they were gone the next day. They were not available during the day. I remember we didn't see those guys hanging out, with the writers They were either putting out fires behind the stage or just saying, we've got so many issues. They might have been on the first bus out of town too, for all I know, because it was nuts. But good times. It was you know, you look back, you don't know when you're going to have one of the greatest days of your life, you know, when you wake up. And that turned out to be what it was. I mean, for anybody who's any rock fan or fan of these bands, or just frankly a fan of a good time here in Michigan, that was just something you'll never forget. Never. I mean, it was awesome.
We learned a few things after the show. However, one thing was never really confirmed. That was the attendance. We could not find an official attendance figure anywhere. Most reports estimated about 50,000, so that's the number we're going with. After the show, the Rantz family was concerned that their property had been beaten up, and they also had to make peace with some of their neighbors.
After the concert, the promoters were gone, basically, along with the money. Okay, so here's the deal, you know. All of that after effect, you know, Tim Bridge had to take care of, had to handle. And myself, and I know my dad, I talked with him briefly about this too. Yeah, Pine Grove Township had a meeting. And you know, a lot of the neighbors, some of the neighbors were okay because they made money, you know, on the parking and those issues. But some of the party goers that wanted to go cross country, you know, through the woods, and they, you know, this is before Google Earth and all, they were coming in from other angles into the backside of the ski area, which is all woods, and some pasture. So there were some fences that were knocked down, and some cows were harassed apparently. And I definitely, you know, apologize to the farmer. I know one farmer in particular, and we talked, and we had, you know, we gave him some money for making him, you know, what would make you whole.
And they were starting to get worried about getting paid.
The next day, you know, you're supposed to go in and kind of, per the agreement, take your percentage of the gate. Promoters are gone. Money's gone. Now I don't know what set this off. You know, I don't know. These are the facts. So we, you know, as far as I know, unless Tim Bridge got something later, we never received any part of that gate proceeds. However, we, you know, again, we had the concessions, which we always had, and so we had to start. You know, we had to file suit.
The sheriff's department reported towing away more than 200 cars. A hospital spokesman said a Detroit woman had claimed she had been raped. She was treated at a local hospital. A man tried to eat part of a seat cushion and the foam from it. Doctors removed foam from his lungs and a zipper from his stomach. 6 people were treated at a local hospital for drug-related problems. A neighbor of Timber Ridge started a petition to have future concerts at Timber Ridge banned. Some of the area farmers were not happy with what they called the lack of security, and they complained about concert goers who trespassed on their land and ruined some of their crops. One local farmer said he had $12,000 in damage to his property. Another said he had $4,500 in damages to his hayfields. He also claimed that his cows lost milk production because the loud noises caused a stampede, and that someone tried to break into his house and barn. A woman claimed she had $10,000 in damages to her property. She had 4 racehorses that were frightened, and a fence was destroyed. Timber Ridge filed suit in Van Buren County Circuit Court claiming Twin G Promotions owed them more than $100,000 for services rendered. The promoters said the concert lost a significant amount of money. Timber Ridge spent $26,000 to prep the area for the concert and $30,000 afterward putting the place back together. They also had almost $40,000 in miscellaneous expenses. Timber Ridge was also due $20,000 for serving meals. And overall, Timber Ridge claimed they were owed around $75,000. Gordon Rantz says he got nothing, and he wasn't happy about it.
We were actually trying to get what we was promised, and we ended up spending $15,000 to regain $8,000 we finally ended up with. I mean, in law.
So will there ever be another huge concert at Timber Ridge? It'll probably never happen again for many reasons. But at least we had May 27, 1984, and the American Rock Festival. So where are all the bands now? Almost all of them are still active. Ratt is still going strong, sort of. They've broken up and got back together a bunch over the years and even sued each other a few times. Their lineup is nowhere close to the original. Stephen Pearcy and Bobby Blotzer have written books. They continue to record and tour. Accept is still together making music. Singer Udo Dirkschneider left and came back a couple of times and is now a solo act. He also stopped playing Accept songs in concert. Guitarist Wolf Hoffman is still the driving force in Accept. Night Ranger is still rocking, touring, and recording. They have 3 original members: guitarist Brad Gillis, who briefly played with Ozzy after Randy Rhoads died, singer and bass player Jack Blades, and drummer Kelly Keagy. Motley Crue played their final show together on December 31st, 2015. Or so they said. They actually signed a contract saying they would never tour again together, but they've since broken that promise and planned a big tour in 2020. They all have their own bands and side projects. Their movie The Dirt debuted in 2019. Kevin DuBrow from Quiet Riot died in 2007. Kevin's best friend was drummer Frankie Benali. Frankie is keeping Quiet Riot alive as the only original member from their classic lineup. Their band has featured many lead singers throughout the years. Frankie was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2019. They released a documentary about the band in 2015. Ozzy reunited with his Black Sabbath mates for one final album and tour, although drummer Bill Ward was not involved. Ozzy is still making music. He released the Ordinary Man album in 2020. In 2019, he had some health problems and announced he had been dealing with Parkinson's disease since 2003. Triumph, who headlined the American Rock Festival, is not active. Rick Emmett has done some solo shows, but the band is not together. They did perform 3 songs in 2019 for an invite-only event celebrating the band. It was recorded to be included in their documentary called Lay It on the Line. We may never know all the stories. The band members may not be able to recall everything about the show, and we may not be able to debunk every rumor. But one thing is for sure, that on one warm, sunny Sunday on Memorial Day weekend, near Kalamazoo, Michigan, Timber Ridge Ski Area was the center of the rock universe for one of the greatest concerts ever held, the American Rock Festival.
Cut.